Julian stood in the wings. His tuxedo was off the rack. His cufflinks were silver, not platinum. He watched the crowd through the gap in the velvet curtain and saw his father, Leona Road Cross, seated at the head table, smiling with the ease of a man who had built an empire from nothing. Leona Road had founded Cross Logistics 40 years ago. He had turned it into a freight behemoth that moved 60% of all goods between Seattle and Vancouver. Beside Leona Road sat M.A. Ruckus Webb, the company's CFO. M.A. Ruckus had been Leona R.D.'s right hand for 15 years. He was lean, sharp-jawed, and wore a watch that cost more than Julian's first car. Across from them sat Julian's older brother, Derek. Derek had the cross charisma. He had the cross jawline. He had been groomed for the throne since childhood while Julian was sent to Boa riding schools and then to a military academy in Switzerland. Derek ran operations now. He ran everything. On paper. Julian stepped into the light. The crowd applauded politely. He approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces. He saw the regional directors, the port authority officials, the union heads, the venture capitalists who had been circling the company for months. He said, "Good evening." He paused. His voice was flat, measured. "I want to thank my father for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I want to thank my brother for not throwing me out of the building." A few people laughed. Derek did not. Derek leaned forward, elbows on the table, and gave Julian a smile that was all teeth. Then he stood. "I think we all know," Derek said, cutting through the murmur, "that Julian's presence here is something of a formality. He's been abroad for most of his adult life. Melita Reschool, then a few years in Europe. He came back 6 months ago and asked for a position in the company. And my father, being generous, gave him a desk." The room went quiet. Derek walked toward the podium. He was taller than Julian, broader. He had the voice of a man accustomed to boardrooms. "Julian handles procurement for the Portland corridor," Derek continued. "That's a nice, safe job. Keeps him out of the way. But tonight he asked to address the summit, and I thought, why not let him talk? Let him say whatever it is he thinks he needs to say." Derek placed a hand on Julian's shoulder. It was a possessive gesture. Said, "I own this stage. I own this family. I own you. Go ahead, little brother. Tell them your vision." The crowd watched. Some were amused. Some were uncomfortable. Leona Road Cross sat motionless, his face unreadable. Julian looked at Derek's hand on his shoulder. He did not shrug it off. He said, "My vision is simple. Cross Logistics has grown complacent. Our margins are re-shrinking. Our competitors in Asia are re-eating our lunch. We've lost 3 major accounts in the last 18 months. Derek laughed. It was a loud, theatrical sound. "Complacent," Derek said. "We just posted record revenue. M.A. Ruckus, tell him." M.A. Ruckus Webb stood. He adjusted his glasses and addressed the crowd. "Our EBITDA is up 12% year-over-year. Our market share in the Pacific Northwest remains dominant. Derek has executed a flawless strategy. Julian, with respect, your procurement reports have been riddled with errors. You've been late on 3 deliveries in the last month alone." Julian said, "I was late because I refused to use the suppliers you ordered me to use." The room stirred. Derek's smile tightened. "You refused an order from your COO? I refused to use suppliers that are re-owned by your wife's family." Silence fell so thick that the ice in the cocktail glasses seemed to stop melting. Derek's face went white, then red. He stepped closer to Julian. His voice dropped to a hiss. "You want to do this here now in front of everyone," Julian said. "I want to do this wherever the truth is visible." Leona R.D. Cross finally spoke. His voice was gravel and authority. "Julian, sit down. We'll discuss this privately." Julian did not sit. He looked at his father. He looked at M.A. Ruckus. He looked at Derek. Then he looked at the crowd. He said, "My father built this company on one principle: trust. He trusted his suppliers. He trusted his partners. He trusted his sons. But Derek has been running a side operation for the last 3 years. He's been funneling our Prima re-shipping contracts to a shell company based in Deloitte Re. That shell company is registered to his wife's maiden name. The same company that supplies our Portland corridor with substandard RD packaging materials that have caused over $2 million RS in damage claims. M.A. Ricus Webb stepped four-way road. His voice was cold. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? Julian reached into his jacket. He pulled out a slim leather folio. He opened it. Inside were documents. Bank statements. Contract signatures. Emails with timestamps. Photographs of Derek meeting with the CEO of that Deloitte Re shell company at a hotel in Seattle. Julian handed the folio to M.A. Ricus. You've been signing off on these invoices, Julian said. You've been receiving a kickback of 1.5% on every contract. That's $300,000 RS over the last year alone. You wired it to an offshore account in the Caymans. The account is under your mother's name. M.A. Ricus took the folio. His hands were trembling. He flipped through the pages. His face drained of all color. Derek grabbed the folio from M.A. Ricus. He scanned it. His jaw tightened. Then he laughed. This is fabricated, Derek said. You're desperate. You've always been desperate. You were the second son. The Spari. You couldn't handle the pressure, so you ran off to Europe. You came back expecting a crown, and I gave you a desk. And now you're forging documents to try to take me down in front of the entire industry. He threw the folio onto the floor. Julian did not look at the papers. He looked at Derek. He said, I'm not trying to take you down. I'm trying to save the company. But I understand that you can't see the difference. Leon R.D. Cross stood. His face was a mask of controlled fury. Both of you. My office. Now. Julian shook his head. No, father. Not now. Not in private. They need to see. He gestured to the crowd. The 200 people. The cameras from the trade press. The phones recording every word. They need to see who they're doing business with. Because if I walk out of this ballroom and let Derek sweep this under the rug, he'll do it again. He'll bleed this company dry. And you'll let him. Because you've always let him. Leon R.D.'s face went rigid. You're accusing me of complicity. I'm accusing you of willful blindness, Julian said. You've known about Derek's side deals for 18 months. You confronted him privately. He promised to stop. He didn't. And you did nothing. Because you couldn't bear to admit that your golden boy is a thief. Derek lunged. He grabbed Julian by the lapels of his tuxedo. His face was inches away. His breath was hot and sour. You're dead, Derek said. You, he, or me, you're dead. I'll ruin you. I'll have you blacklisted from every shipping port on the coast. Julian put his hand on Derek's chest. He pushed. Not road. Just enough to break the grip. He said. You'll do nothing. Because you're about to be arrested. He looked at the doors at the back of the ballroom. Two men in RK suits pushed through the crowd. They had badges. They had federal insignias on their belts. One of them said, Derek Cross M.A. Ricus Webb, you're under investigation for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Please remain seated. The room erupted. Phones flashed. Voices rose. Derek stumbled backway RD, knocking over a chair. M.A. Ricus Webb sank into his seat and put his head in his hands. Julian adjusted his cufflinks. He walked to the podium. He looked at the chaos. He said, Cross Logistics will be restructured. Effective immediately, I am assuming control of operations. My father has stepped down. He'll be COO parading with the investigation. Any suppliers who have been party to Derek's scheme have until midnight to contact my office and renegotiate terms. Failure to do so will result in litigation and termination of all contracts. He paused. He looked at his father, who was staring at him with a mixture of shock and something that might have been pride. He looked at Derek, who was being handcuffed. He looked at the crowd. He said, I told you I had a vision. This is it. Transparency, accountability, and the end of the old Gua Road. He stepped away from the podium. He walked down the steps and through the center aisle. The crowd parut. People whispered. Some reached out to touch his arm. He did not stop. At the door, he turned. M.A. Ricus Webb was being led out by the federal agents. Derek was fighting them, screaming. Leona Road-Cross was sitting alone at the head table. Ring at the folio on the floor. Julian said one last time. I told you. I said my family owns their supply chain. But I didn't say which family. He walked out into the cold Vancouver night. Julian stood on the sidewalk. The cold air bit his lungs. He had not worn an overcoat. He had not planned to leave the ballroom early. He had planned to stay and watch the fallout. But he needed air. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. It was his mother. He did not answer. She had called 7 times in the last 10 minutes. She was in the Bahamas. She had been in the Bahamas for the last 2 years. Spending money she did not earn and did not know how to manage. Leona Road had given her a black card and told her to stay out of the way. Julian had no sympathy for her. Not tonight. His phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Cross? Yes. This is Special Agent Navarro. I need you to come to the federal building. We have some questions about the documents. I'll be there in 40 minutes. You brought a lawyer. I am a lawyer. There was a pause on the other end. Your file says you're a logistics consultant. My file is incomplete. Julian ended the call. He walked to his car. It was a black sedan. 5 years old. Paid for in cash. He had bought it the day he returned to Vancouver, because he knew he would need to move unseen. He drove through the empty streets. The federal building was a concrete monolith on the waterfront. He parked in the visitor lot and walked through the revolving doors. The night guard recognized him from the summit broadcast. Mr. Cross. They're expecting you on the 4th floor. Julian nodded. He took the elevator. The doors opened onto a corridor of fluorescent light. Agent Navarro was waiting. She was a woman in her 40s. Sharp eyes. A jacket that did not hide the holster on her hip. Follow me. She led him to an interrogation room. Windowless. 2 chairs. A metal table bolted to the floor. Sitting at the table was Derek. His hands were cuffed in front of him. His tuxedo was torn at the shoulder. His face was red and blotchy. He had been crying. Julian sat across from him. Navarro stood in the corner. Derek said, You think you've won? Julian said nothing. Derek leaned 4-way road. The cuffs clinked on the table. You think you're going to run the company? You think the BOA RD will accept you? You've been gone for a decade. You don't know anyone. You don't know the clients. You don't know the ports. You don't know the unions. They'll eat you alive. Julian said, I know the ports because I worked them. I spent 6 months unloading containers in Rotterdam. I spent 6 months driving a truck in the Balkans. I spent 6 months in Singapore. Leah Renning, how they moved cargo faster and cheaper than we do. While you were in boardrooms, I was in the hold. Derek's eyes widened. That's not true. You were in Europe. You were... I was working. I was Leah Renning. I was watching. I was building a network of people who knew me only as a laborer. People who don't know I'm a cross. People who will never talk to you again after tonight. Navarro spoke. Mr. Cross, your brother is facing 40 years. We're offering a deal. Full CO operation in exchange for a reduced sentence. He says he's willing to testify against your father. Julian turned to look at her. My father is not the target. He signed off on the contracts. Those contracts were forged. Derek and Americus used his signature stamp without his knowledge. Derek laughed. You're protecting him. After everything. He never protected you. He sent you away. He gave me everything. And you're still protecting him. Julian said, I'm protecting the company. If my father goes down, the stock collapses. The employees lose their pensions. The clients flee. I need stability. I need a bridge. He's the bridge. Derek slammed his hands on the table. You're a liar. You've always been a liar. You told Mom you were sick so she wouldn't visit. You told Dad you were failing at school so he wouldn't send you to H.A. River Road. You made yourself invisible on purpose. Why? Julian stood. He leaned over the table. His face was close to Derek's. His voice was quiet. Because I needed them to underestimate me. I needed you to underestimate me. I needed everyone in that ballroom to think I was the useless second son who couldn't handle the pressure. Because if they knew what I was actually doing, they would have stopped me. Stopped you from what? Julian straightened. From taking everything. He walked to the door. Navarro moved to block him. We're not done. We are redone. You have the documents. You have Derek's confession on tape. You have M.A. Ricus Webb's offshore account. You don't need me. I have a company to restructure and a BOA RD to fire. Navarro studied him. Her hand hovered NEA or her holster. Your father is in the next room. He's asking for you. Julian paused. Tell him I'll see him in the morning. At the office. He walked out. He drove to the Cross Logistics headquarters. It was a glass tower in the financial district. The lights were on. The night shift was scrambling. Word had spread. He walked past the security desk. The GUA RD saluted. Mr. Cross. Hold all calls. I need the BOA RD's contact list. And the HR files. And the last 3 years of audit reports. All of them. Yes, sir. He took the elevator to the top floor. His father's office. The corner suite with the panoramic view of the harbor. He sat in his father's chair. He swiveled to face the window. The water was dark. The cranes in the port were idle. His phone buzzed. His mother again. He answered. Julian. What have you done? What I had to do. Your father is devastated. Your brother is in jail. The news is everywhere. The stock is down 20%. We're losing money. You lost money a long time ago, Mother. You just didn't notice. She was silent. He said, I need you to send me the deeds to the property in the Bahamas, and the accounts in the Swiss bank, and the names of the beneficiaries on the trust fund. Why? Because I'm liquidating all of it. Every asset that isn't tied to the core business. I need capital. I need to shore up the balance sheet. And I need to cut the fat. You can't do that. That's my money. That's my retirement. It's not your money. It's the company's money. You just had the spending authority. That authority ends tonight. He hung up. He sat in the silence. The hum of the HVAC system. The distant wail of a siren on the street below. He opened his laptop. He pulled up the BOA RD's contact list. 15 names. 15 people who had voted to keep Derek in power. 15 people who had accepted Derek's bribes or his promises or his favors. He began drafting emails. Each one was short. Each one was cold. Each one said the same thing. Your position on the BOA RD is terminated effective immediately. Your Shaw residential will be bought out at Massachusetts market value. Your severance package is in the mail. Do not contact the office. Do not contact the press. Legal action will follow if you attempt to disrupt the transition. He sent them all. Then he called the security firm he had retained 6 months ago. Private group based in London. Specialists in corporate takeovers. Begin phase 2, he said. Yes, sir. He closed the laptop. He leaned back in the chair. The door opened. Leona Roadcross walked in. His father looked old. Older than Julian remembered. The lines on his face were deeper. The shoulders were stooped. Leona RD said, You've dismantled everything I built. Julian said, I've saved what was left. I built this company from nothing. A single truck. A single route. I worked 70 hours a week. I slept in the cab. I know the story. Then you know what you're destroying. I'm not destroying it. I'm modernizing it. Derek was running it into the ground. You let him. M.A. Ricus Webb was embezzling. You let him. The BOA RD was taking bribes. You let them. You let all of them because you couldn't admit you had made a mistake. Leone RD sat down in the chair across from the desk. He looked at his son. You were the one who was supposed to be the mistake. The second son. The sparee. The one who couldn't handle the pressure. Julian said nothing. Leona Rhodes said, Your mother wanted to send you to a therapist. I said no. I said you needed discipline. I sent you to Melita Reschool. I thought you'd come back angry. I thought you'd come back broken. I never thought you'd come back like this. Julian stood. He walked around the desk. He stood in front of his father. You sent me away because I was the only one who questioned you. You sent me away because I pointed out the cracks in your empire. And you sent me away because you couldn't bear to admit that your perfect son, Derek, was a failure. Leona RD's voice cracked. I loved him. Love doesn't excuse theft. Love doesn't excuse fraud. Love doesn't excuse 20 years of mismanagement. I'm gonna sleep in this office tonight. Tomorrow, I'm calling a shareholders meeting. And the day after that, I'm going to start rebuilding. He walked to the door. Leona Rhodes said, Where are you going? Julian said, To get coffee. I'm going to be up all night. He left his father in the corner office. He took the elevator to the ground floor. The lobby was empty. The security guard was watching the news on a small screen. The news was footage from the ballroom. Derek being handcuffed. Marcus Webb being led away. Julian's face on the podium. The guard looked up. Mr. Cross, you're all over the news. Julian said, Turn it off. I need quiet. He walked to the all-night diner across the street. He ordered black coffee. He sat in a booth by the window. He watched the glass tower. His tower now. His reflection read back at him from the dark glass. He looked tired. He looked older than 32. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The union's meeting tonight. They want to talk to you. They're angry about Derek. They're worried about layoffs. Julian typed back. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. My office. I'll bring donuts. He put the phone away. He drank his coffee. He thought about the next 48 hours. The shareholders. The unions. The media. The federal investigation. The legal battles. He thought about the Boa Road. The shell companies. The hidden accounts. The bribes. He thought about his brother. His father. His mother. And he thought about the private army he had assembled in the shadows. The logistics experts. The security specialists. The forensic accountants. The lawyers. The people who knew him only as a name on a contract. He finished his coffee. He walked back to the tower. The security guard said, Sir, there's someone here to see you. They said it was urgent. Julian looked at the lobby. A woman stood by the elevator. She was in her 50s. Gray hair. Steel glasses. She wore a tailored suit and ride a leather briefcase. She said, Mr. Cross, I'm Elaine Voss. I represent the Pacific Northwest Port Authority. I've been trying to reach you for months. You never returned my calls. Julian said, I was waiting for the right moment. She said, The right moment is now. We need to talk about the exclusive shipping rights for the new terminal. The contract expires in 30 days. Derek was going to sign it over to his wife's company. We need to know what you're going to do. Julian said, I'm going to renegotiate, and I'm going to win. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. They shook hands. Julian took the elevator to the top floor. He walked into his father's office. His father was gone. The chair was empty. The desk was clear. A single piece of paper was on the surface. Julian picked it up. It was a resignation letter, signed by Leona Roadcross, dated tonight. The letter said, I am stepping down as CEO. I am transferring all authority to my son, Julian Cross. I am also transferring my residential to him. I can no longer lead this company. I made too many mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I am sorry. Julian folded the letter. He placed it in his jacket pocket. He sat in the chair. He turned off the lights. He sat in the darkness. He looked at the harbor. The cranes were still idle. But not for long. Tomorrow he would move the world. The lobby of Cross Logistics was a battlefield at dawn. Television crews had set up tripods on the marble floor. Reporters shouted over each other. Photographers pressed their lenses against the glass doors. Julian walked through them. He did not stop. He did not wave. He moved through the chaos like a man walking through rain. The security guards formed a wedge. They read a path to the elevators. A reporter shoved a microphone toward his face. Mr. Cross, Is it true you fired the entire BOA RD? Are you planning to sell the company? What about the federal investigation? Did you know about your brother's crimes before tonight? Julian paused. He looked at the reporter, a young woman with a frantic expression. He said, I knew about his crimes 6 months ago. I gathered the evidence. I waited. I chose tonight. That's all I'm going to say. He stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on the mayhem. The top floor was silent. His team had arrived. EARLY. 3 men and 2 women. They were seated in the conference room with laptops open and phones pressed to their ears. Julian walked in. Status. One of the men looked up. He was tall, Asian, clean-shaven. He wore a tactical vest over a dress shirt. His name was Chun. He had worked for Julian in Europe. BOA road members are all in panic mode. 2 of them are trying to call emergency SHA holders meetings. 3 of them have lawyered up. The rest are silent. They're waiting to see what you do. Julian said, What's the stock at? Down 22%. We're expecting another drop when the markets open in New York. The analysts are calling it a crisis of confidence. Julian said, Buy the dip. Chun blinked. Sir, buy the dip. Use the liquid assets from the offshore accounts. Use the trust fund money. Use the property in the Bahamas. Buy as much stock as you can without triggering a mandatory disclosure. I want controlling interest by noon. Chun nodded. He picked up his phone. Julian sat at the head of the table. The conference room had a view of the harbor. The cranes were beginning to move. The first ships were coming in from Asia. A woman with red hair slid a tablet toward him. Her name was S.A. Ra. She was the head of his forensic accounting unit. Mr. Cross, we've identified the full scope of Derek's network. 17 shell companies, 12 offshore accounts, 16 individuals who received kickbacks. 3 of them are in federal custody. The rest are going to be indicted by end of week. Julian scanned the tablet. Where's the money? Mostly in the Caymans and Switzerland. But we found a trail to Hong Kong. Derek was moving cash through a trading firm. They're laundering for other clients too. The FBI is very interested. Freeze all of it. Every account. Every shell company. Every associated individual. I want them all frozen before lunch. S.A. Ra said, That's going to require international CO operation. Julian said, I have it. I've been building relationships with the financial intelligence units in 12 countries. They're on standby. Call them. S.A. Ra made a note. Julian looked at the rest of the team. What about the unions? Chun looked up from his phone. Union leadership is here. They're in the cafeteria. They've been waiting since 6 a.m. They want guarantees about jobs. They're afraid you're going to slash operations. Julian stood. Let's go talk to them. He walked to the cafeteria. It was a large room with long tables. 20 men and women sat in clusters. They wore hard hats and reflective vests. They had calloused hands and tired eyes. They stood when Julian entered. One of them stepped 4-way road. He was a thick man with a gray beard and a missing finger on his right hand. You're Julian Cross. Yes. I'm Frank Moran. I run the Longshoremen's Local. Your brother tried to cut our benefits 3 times. We fought him every time. Now you're in charge. What are you going to do to us? Julian said, I'm going to increase your benefits. The room went silent. Frank Moran narrowed his eyes. You're lying. Julian said. Derek was cutting benefits to pad his margins. He was skimming from the labor budget to fund his side operations. I've reviewed the books. The money is there. It was never missing. It was just hidden. I'm putting it back. He pulled out a folder. He handed it to Frank. New benefits package. Better healthcare, better pensions. Profit SHA ring plan tied to performance. If we do well, you do better. Frank opened the folder. He read. His face changed. The suspicion softened. He looked up. This is real. It's real. He turned to the other union members. They crowded around the folder. Whispers spread. Frank said, What do you want in return? Julian said, I want you to work. I want you to be the best port in North America. I want you to beat the numbers from last year by 20%. Can you do that?" Frank grinned. It was a gap-toothed grin. "We'll beat it by 30. Julian nodded. He walked back to the elevator. Chin followed. "Sir, the Shah Reholders meeting is scheduled for 1 p.m. A lot of them are going to be hostile. They're going to accuse you of a coup. They're going to demand answers about the stock drop." Julian said, "I have answers. I have a balance sheet that shows Derek bled $200 million in 3 years. I have proof of fraud. I have federal indictments. I have a plan to turn the company around in 6 months." Chan said, "They're still going to fight you." Julian said, "Let them." He returned to the top floor. Ra had more updates. The offshore accounts were frozen. The shell companies were being unwound. 2 more BOA RD members had lawyered up. Julian said, "Good. Let them lawyer up. It won't help them. I have everything I need." He looked at his watch. It was 9 a.m. He had a meeting with the Port Authority at 10. A meeting with the major clients at 11. The Shah Reholders meeting at 1. A press conference at 3. He had no time for breakfast. He had no time for sleep. He had no time for FIAR. He drank black coffee and worked. The Port Authority meeting was held in the conference room. Elaine Voss arrived with a team of lawyers. They brought contracts. They brought spreadsheets. They brought demands. Elaine said, "Mr. Cross, we need to know your commitment to the new terminal." The previous administration under Derek was non-committal. He was trying to divert the contract to his wife's company. "We need a real partner," Julian said. "You have one." He pulled out a document. It was his own proposal. 90 pages. Detailed. Ambitious. He pushed it across the table. "Read this." Elaine opened it. She read the executive summary. Then the first chapter. Then the second. She looked up. "This is comprehensive. This is aggressive. This requires significant investment. I have it. You have it. Where your company just lost 20% of its market cap." Julian said, "The market cap is temporary. The assets are real. I've liquidated non-core holdings. I've restructured debt. I've secured a line of credit from a consortium of European banks. I have capital." Elaine said, "How much?" "Enough." She studied him. "I'll have my legal team review this. But I have to say, Mr. Cross, I'm impressed. Your brother never proposed anything like this. He was a CA retaker. You're an architect." Julian said, "I don't build. I rebuild." They shook hands. The clients' meeting was more contentious. 3 major retailers. 2 tech manufacturers. A pharmaceutical distributor. They sat in the conference room with crossed arms and skeptical eyes. One of them spoke. A woman named Jennifer Cole. She was the head of supply chain for a national grocery chain. "Julian, we've been with Cross Logistics for a decade. But your brother's scandal has made us nervous. We have Shah Reholders. We have BOA RDS. We can't afford to be associated with a company under federal investigation." Julian said, "The federal investigation is focused on Derek and Ricus. They're gone. I've brought in new leadership, new controls, new oversight. I'm personally guaranteeing every contract we have with you. If we fail, you get your money back. All of it." Jennifer Cole leaned forward. "Personal guarantee. That's risky. What if you go down too?" Julian said. "I won't." She looked at the other clients. They exchanged glances. Jennifer said, "We'll need more than a guarantee. We'll need transparency. Full access to your books. Regular our audits by an independent firm. If you can't give us that, we walk." Julian said, "You'll have all of that by Friday. The independent auditors are already in place. I hired them 3 months ago. They've been working in the background. I can share their preliminary findings with you today." He slid a folder across the table. Jennifer opened it. She scanned the pages. Her expression changed. "This is thorough. This is detailed. This shows the company is solvent and has cash reserves." Julian said, "The company was never broke. The company was just mismanaged. That's over. The clients began to nod. Some of them reached for the folders. Some of them smiled. Jennifer said, "We'll stay, but we'll be watching. If you falter, we're gone." Julian said, "Fair enough." They left. The Shah Reholders meeting was held in the ballroom of a hotel downtown. 300 Shah Reholders. Some had small stakes. Some had large. All of them were angry. They shouted when Julian walked in. He walked to the podium. He stood in front of the microphone. He said, "I'm not going to apologize for saving this company. I'm not going to apologize for exposing fraud. I'm not going to apologize for firing a BOA RD that let my brother steal from all of you." The room went quiet. He continued, "I know you're worried. I know you're SCA red. I know you're angry. You should be. But you should be angry at Derek. You should be angry at Americus. You should be angry at the BOA Road. Not at me. I'm the one who stopped them." A Shah Reholder stood. A man in a tweed jacket. "What about the stock? We've lost millions. How are you going to recover that?" Julian said. "The stock will recover. I'm already buying. I'm not a seller. I'm a buyer. I believe in this company. I've invested my own money. I've liquidated assets to do it. I'm betting everything on this. And I'm going to win." Another Shah Reholder stood. A woman with silver hair. "What about Derek's criminal trial? What about the media? What about the long-term reputation of this company? We're going to be tainted for years." Julian said, "Derek will be convicted. He'll go to prison. The media will move on. Reputation is rebuilt through performance. We'll deliver performance. We'll out-deliver our competitors. We'll regain trust. And by this time next year, you'll have forgotten tonight." The Shah Reholders murmured. Julian waited. One of them said, "What do you need from us?" Julian said, "Patience, trust, and your votes. I need you to vote for the restructuring plan I'm about to present. I need you to give me a year. I'll turn this around. I guarantee it." He pulled out a document. A full restructuring plan. He handed it to the front row. They passed it around. The murmuring grew louder, then quieter. One of the Shah Reholders said, "This is ambitious." Julian said, "I'm ambitious." Another said, "This is risky." Julian said, "I'm not risk-averse. I'm calculated." The Shah Reholders looked at each other. They looked at the document. They looked at Julian. The chairman of the BOA RD, the only member who had not been fired, stood and walked to the podium. He said, "I've been on this BOA RD for 20 years. I've seen a lot of leaders. I've seen Leona Roadcross build this company. I've seen Derek Cross try to tear it down. And now I'm seeing Julian Cross step in and take control." He looked at Julian. "I'll support the restructuring. I'll vote yes. And I'll encourage everyone else to do the same." He shook Julian's hand. The Shah Reholders began to clap. It was hesitant at first. Then it grew louder. Some of them stood. Julian nodded. He walked off the stage. The press conference was at 3. The hotel ballroom was packed. Cameras from every major network. Reporters from the trade press. Bloggers. Analysts. Julian stood at the podium. He faced the lights. He said, "Cross Logistics is not for sale. Cross Logistics is not going bankrupt. Cross Logistics is entering a new era. I'm the CEO. I'm the majority Shah Reholder. And I'm going to turn this company into the dominant force in North American shipping." He paused. Questions. A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Cross, your brother says you fabricated the documents. He's claiming you set him up. What do you say to that?" Julian said, "The documents are real. The accounts are real. The federal investigation is real. Derek will have his day in court. The evidence will speak for itself." Another reporter, "Your father resigned. Was he forced out?" Julian said, "My father resigned because he felt he could no longer lead. I accepted his resignation. He remains a consultant. He remains a Shah Reholder. He remains pa-RT of this company. But he's no longer in Cha RGE." Another, "What about the union? They've been vocal about your brother. Are you going to continue his labor policies? Julian said, I've already met with union leadership. We've reached an agreement. Better benefits, better pay, better working conditions. They're going to help us grow. We're partners now. The press conference went on for 30 minutes. Julian answered every question. He did not flinch. He did not deflect. He did not lie. When it was over, he walked back to his car. Chun was waiting. Sir, there's something you need to see, Julian said. What? Chun handed him a tablet. The screen showed a live feed from a warehouse in the industrial district. Derek was there. He was not in handcuffs. He was wearing a work shirt. He was talking to a group of men. Men in suits. Men with hard faces. Julian said, he was released on bail. Chin said, yes. And he's meeting with a rival company. They're planning a hostile takeover. They're going to buy up enough stock to challenge your majority. And they're going to use Derek as a puppet. Julian Sta read at the tablet. The warehouse feed was grainy but clear enough. Derek stood in the center of a circle of men. He was gesturing with his hands, pointing at something on a table. Blueprints, Julian guessed. Or a map. Or a list of holders. The men around him nodded. They were not dockworkers. They were not union men. They wore tailored suits and expensive shoes. Their faces were hard, weathered, the faces of men who had killed deals and careers and maybe more. Chan said, we've identified 3 of them. The one on the left is Victor Kane. He runs Kane MA Ritime out of Seattle. They've been trying to break into the Pacific Northwest for years. Derek blocked them every time. Now they're allies. Julian said, the one in the middle. That's Gregor Sokolov. He's a Russian financier. He's been buying up distressed shipping assets on the West Coast. He's got deep pockets and no scruples. And the tall one, Chun hesitated. That one we don't have a name for yet. But he's rying a briefcase. And he's taking notes. He's the one running the meeting. Julian handed the tablet back to Chun. Where is this warehouse, industrial district? Off Massachusetts Rhine Drive. Abandoned cold storage facility. Derek leased it under a fake name 3 weeks ago. He's been planning this since before the summit. Julian said, he didn't plan this. He's too arrogant to plan. Someone else is pulling the strings. Chin nodded. Sokolov probably. He's the money. Kane is the logistics. The tall one is the brains. Julian turned to the car. Get me a car. Not the sedan. Something fast and UNMA raked. And get me a driver who doesn't ask questions. Chan said, sir, you're not going to the warehouse. That's reckless. They have security. They have cameras. They have, Julian said. I'm not going to the warehouse. I'm going to the federal building. I'm going to talk to Agent Navarro. And I'm going to find out why Derek is out on bail when he's clear RLY a flight risk. He got into the UNMA raked car. A black SUV with tinted windows. The driver was a former Royal MA Rheinchen had hired. He said nothing. He drove fast. Julian made a call. Agent Navarro answered on the second ring. Mr. Cross, I expected your call. Why is Derek out? He made bail. 5 million. Cash. Someone posted it within an hour of his arrest. Who? A shell company. Registered in the Caymans. We're tracing it. But it's going to take time. Julian said, I can save you time. The money came from Gregor Sokolov. He's a Russian financier. He's in Vancouver right now. He's meeting with Derek at a warehouse on Massachusetts Rhine Drive. There was a pause on the other end. How do you know that? I have eyes everywhere. You should too. I'm sending you the address. Send a surveillance team. Don't arrest them. Just watch. I need to know who the tall man is. Navarro said, you're giving orders to a federal agent. Julian said, I'm giving you a lead. Take it or leave it. Another pause. Send the address. Julian ended the call. He sent the address. He looked at the driver. Change of plans. Take me to the Cross Logistics Data Center. The one in Burnaby. The driver nodded. The SUV accelerated. The data center was a nondescript building in an industrial park. No signs, no logos, just a gray concrete box with a reinforced door and a retinal scanner. Julian had set it up himself 6 months ago. It contained the backup servers, the encrypted files, the evidence he had gathered on Derek and everyone else. He walked through the door. The interior was cold and sterile. Rows of servers hummed in the dim light. A single workstation sat in the corner. He sat down. He pulled up the surveillance feeds he had installed in Derek's offices. Derek's home, Derek's car. He had been recording for months. He had gigabytes of footage. He had audio. He had GPS data. He searched for the tall man. He ran facial recognition against every database he had access to. The system churned. Took 3 minutes. The result came back. No match. Not in the Canadian database. Not in the American. Not in Interpol. The man was a ghost. Julian leaned back. He thought. A ghost meant someone with serious resources. Someone who had erased themselves. Someone who was either intelligence, organized crime, or private sector black ops. None of those were good options. He pulled up the financial trail. Sokolov's money had moved through 3 shell companies before reaching Derek's bail. Then it had moved again. Into a holding account. Then into a trading account. Then into a series of small purchases. Options contracts on cross-logistics stock. The options were set to expire in 2 weeks. If the stock dropped below a certain threshold, Sokolov would make a fortune. If the stock held, he would lose everything. Julian smiled. That was the play. Sokolov was betting against him. He was shorting the stock. He was using Derek to create chaos, to drive the price down, to trigger a panic. And then he would buy the company at a discount. Julian said out loud, "You're going to lose a lot of money, Gregor." He called Chin. "I need you to do something. I need you to leak a story. Tell the press that Derek is meeting with Sokolov. Tell them Sokolov is planning a hostile takeover. Tell them Sokolov is shorting the stock. I want the market to know." Chun said, "That could backfire. If the market panics, the stock drops even more." Julian said, "The market is going to panic anyway. Derek is out. Sokolov is circling. The news is going to break. I'd rather control the narrative. Make it look like Sokolov is the predator. Make me look like the victim fighting back. Then I'll buy more stock. I'll soak up the panic selling. And when the dust settles, I'll own even more." Chun said, "That's high risk." Julian said, "I'm high risk. Do it." He hung up. He pulled up another feed. This one was from a drone he had deployed over the Wari house. The drone was small, quiet, nearly invisible. It hovered 200 feet above the roof. The feed showed Derek and the men leaving the Wari house. Derek got into a black sedan. Sokolov got into a limousine. The tall man got into a separate car, a silver Mercedes. Julian zoomed in on the license plate. He ran it through the system. The plate was registered to a rental agency. The rental agency was owned by a holding company. The holding company was owned by another holding company. The trail went cold after 5 layers. Julian made a note. He would come back to it. He pulled up his bank accounts. The liquid assets from the Bahamas, from the Swiss accounts, from the trust funds. He had moved them all into a single trading account. He had access to $80 million RS in cash. He had access to another $200 million in lines of credit. He had enough firepower to buy a significant portion of the company's outstanding Shah-Res. ESTA route buying. He placed orders in small increments. 5,000 Shah residential here, 10,000 there. He didn't want to trigger the automated trading alerts. He wanted to be stealthy. He wanted to build his position slowly. By the end of the day, he would have another 5% of the company. By the end of the week, he would have controlling interest locked in. His phone buzzed. It was S.A. Ra. "Mr. Cross, we've found something." The tall man. "We traced the rental car. It led to a company that led to a law firm. The law firm represents a private equity group. The private equity group is based in London. And they've been buying up shipping companies all over Europe." Julian said, What's the name of the private equity group? It's called Apex Capital. Julian felt a cold knot in his stomach. He knew Apex Capital. Everyone in the industry knew Apex Capital. They were the ones who had dismantled 3 major shipping conglomerates in the last 5 years. They bought companies, stripped them for PARTS, and sold the pieces at a profit. They were vultures, and they had their sights on Cross Logistics. Who runs Apex? Ra said. That's the problem. The CEO is a man named M.A. Ricus Webb. Julian said. M.A. Ricus Webb is in federal custody. Ra said. No. M.A. Ricus Webb is in federal custody. But Apex Capital is run by a different M.A. Ricus Webb. His full name is M.A. Ricus Webb III. He's M.A. Ricus Webb's son. Julian stood up. He walked to the window of the data center. He looked out at the gray sky, the son of the CFO, the son of the man who had embezzled from his company, the son who had been watching from the shadows, waiting for his moment. He's been planning this for years, Julian said. His father was the inside man. Derek was the patsy. Sokolov was the money. Kane was the logistics. And Apex Capital was the endgame. Ra said. What do we do? Julian said. We do what we've always done. We fight. I need you to dig into Apex Capital. I need you to find their vulnerabilities. I need you to find their debt. I need you to find their enemies. Everyone has enemies. I want to know who wants to take them down as badly as I do. He ended the call. He sat back down at the workstation. He pulled up the drone feed again. The Wari house was empty now. But the drone had captured something else. A CAR had arrived after the meeting. A nondescript sedan. A man had gotten out. He had walked into the Wari house. He had stayed for 10 minutes. He had walked out with a briefcase. Julian zoomed in on the man's face. He ran the facial recognition. The result came back immediately. It was his father. Leona Roadcross. Julian read at the screen. He felt the cold knot tighten. His father had been at the Wari house. His father had met with Derek's allies. His father had walked out with a briefcase. Julian said out loud. You resigned. You gave me your Shah-Rez. You said you were sorry. And now you're meeting with the enemy. He thought about the resignation letter, the apology, the transfer of authority. It had been too easy. His father had never been the type to surrender. He had always been a fighter, a survivor, a manipulator. Julian had been so focused on Derek and M.A. Ricus that he had forgotten the man who had built the empire. The man who had taught Derek everything. The man who had known about the fraud and done nothing. The man who had sent Julian away because he asked too many questions. Julian picked up his phone. He called his father. Leona Road answered on the first ring. Julian. Father. I need to see you. Tonight. My office. There was a pause. Leona Road said. I'm not in Vancouver. Julian said. I know. You're at the Wari house. I saw you on the drone. Another pause. Longer this time. Leona Rd's voice was steady. You have drones now. I have everything. And I know you met with Derek. I know you met with Sokolov. I know you walked out with a briefcase. What's in the briefcase? Leona Road was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I'll come to the office. Tonight. Alone. And I'll tell you everything. He hung up. Julian sat in the cold data center. He read at the screen. The drone feed was still running. The Wari house was empty. But his father had been there. And his father was coming to talk. Julian didn't know if he could trust a word. But he knew one thing. The war had just gotten more complicated. And the enemy was not just in the Wari house. The enemy was sitting in his father's chair. His father's name on the door. His father's blood in his veins. Julian picked up the phone again. He called Chin. Cancel the press leak. I need to think. I need to see what my father has to say. And I need you to pull the records on every interaction Leona Roadcross has had with Apex Capital in the last 5 years. Everything. Emails. Phone calls. Meetings. Travel. I want to know if my father has been playing me since the beginning. Chen said. Sir, that's your father. Julian said. That's the point. He hung up. He walked out of the data center. He got into the SUV. He said to the driver, "Take me back to the office. I have a meeting with a ghost." The SUV cut through the evening traffic. Julian watched the city lights blur past the tinted window. His father was coming to the office. Leona Roadcross, the Patria RCH, the builder, the man who had given him everything and nothing. Julian's mind churned through possibilities. He had been so focused on Derek, so focused on Americus, so focused on Sokolov and Kane and the tall man. He had let his RD down around the one person who knew him best. His phone buzzed. Chen's voice came through. "Sir, I've got the records. Leona Roadcross has had contact with Apex Capital going back 4 years. It sta route as a consultancy. He was advising them on North American shipping routes. But it escalated. He met with Americus Webb III in London 18 months ago. They had dinner. 3 hours. No record of what they discussed." Julian said, 18 months. That's before Derek sta route the shell companies. That's before the fraud escalated. Chen said, "Yes, sir. It's also when your father sta route pushing for Derek to take over operations. He told the BOA RD that Derek was ready. He told the BOA RD that you were unsuitable." Julian said, "He was setting up Derek as the fall guy. He was creating a scapegoat." Chun said, "It looks that way. He knew Derek would be caught. He knew the fraud would be exposed. And he knew that when it happened, the company would be vulnerable. Vulnerable to a takeover. Vulnerable to a vulture like Apex Capital." Julian said, "He was going to sell the company to them. He was going to let them strip it for RTS. He was going to walk away with a golden rashut." Chun said, "That's our read. But we don't have definitive proof. He's been CA refill. He's used intermediaries. He's used shell companies. He's left no trail directly linking him to Apex." Julian said, "He's good. He taught me everything I know. But he didn't teach me everything he knows." He hung up. The SUV pulled into the underground GA rage of Cross Logistics headquarters. Julian took the private elevator to the top floor. His office was RK. He didn't turn on the lights. He sat in the chair behind the desk. He waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then the elevator chimed. The doors opened. Leona Roadcross walked in. His father was dressed in a RK overcoat. He CA ride a leather briefcase. The same briefcase from the Wari house. He looked tired. He looked old. He looked like a man who had been CA rying a secret for a very long time. Leona Road said, "You know about Apex?" Julian said, "I know you met with Americus Webb III. I know you've been advising them for years. I know you've been setting up the company for a sale." Leona Road set the briefcase on the desk. He opened it. Inside were documents, contracts, transfer agreements, Shah reholder proxies. Leona Road said, "I was going to sell. I had a deal in place. Apex was going to pay me $500 million in cash. I was going to retire. I was going to leave Derek to take the fall. I was going to leave you to pick up the pieces." Julian said nothing. Leona Road continued, "But that was before the summit. Before I saw what you did. Before I saw you stand in front of 200 people and dismantle everything I built. Before I saw you hand Derek to the FBI. Before I saw you take control. You were supposed to be the weak one, the second son, the Spari. I sent you away because you were too curious. You asked too many questions. You saw the cracks in the empire. You saw the rot. And you couldn't stop yourself from pointing it out. I thought if I sent you away, you would soften. You would forget. You would become like the others. But you didn't. You became Ha-Rider. You became sharper. You became more dangerous." Julian said, "You're complimenting me or warning me?" Leona Road said, "Both. I came here tonight to give you something. I came here to give you the deal. The contract with Apex. The still active. The still valid. If I sign it, the company is theirs. But I'm not going to sign it." He pushed the briefcase across the desk. Julian looked at the documents. He picked one up. He read it. It was a binding agreement. Leona Roadcross had agreed to sell his controlling interest in Cross Logistics to Apex Capital for $500 million RS. The agreement was dated 2 years ago. It had a deadline. The deadline was tomorrow. Julian said, "You never told Derek about this." Leona Road said, "Derek was a tool. He was useful for creating chaos. He was useful for distracting the Boa Road. He was useful for absorbing blame. But he was never pa-RT of the plan. The plan was always Apex." Julian said, "Why are you telling me this now?" Leona Road sat down in the chair across from the desk. He looked at his son. "Because I saw you at the summit. I saw the way you handled Derek. I saw the way you handled Americus. I saw the way you handled the press. And I realized that I've been wrong about you my entire life. You're not the sparee. You're the heir. You're the one I should have been grooming from the beginning. You're the one who can save this company. You're the one who can beat Apex." Julian said, "You want me to beat Apex?" Leona Road said, "I want you to destroy them. They're the ones who have been pulling the strings. They're the ones who hired Derek. They're the ones who funded Sokolov. They're the ones who put Americus Webb in the CFO position. They've been infiltrating this company for years. And if you don't stop them, they'll pick at apart and leave nothing but bones." Julian said, "Why should I believe you?" Leona Road said, "Because I'm giving you the evidence. I'm giving you the contract. I'm giving you the names of their intermediaries. I'm giving you everything they used against us. And I'm giving you permission to use it." Julian said, "Permission?" Leona Road said, "I built this company. I made the mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I gave Derek too much power. I gave Americus too much freedom. I gave Apex too many openings. But I'm still your father. And I'm still the majority share holder. If you want to win this fight, you need my shares. I'll transfer them to you tonight. I'll give you full control. I'll give you the ammunition you need to take them down. But you have to do it fast. The deadline is tomorrow. If you don't stop them by then, the contract triggers. They can force a sale. They can force a merger. They can take everything." Julian looked at the contract. He looked at his father. He said, "You're giving me the company." Leona Road said, "I'm giving you the fight. You have to win it yourself." Julian picked up the contract. He read the termination clause. There was a loophole. If the majority shareholder could prove that the contract was signed under duress, it was void. If he could prove that Apex had conspired with insiders to devalue the company, it was void. Julian said, "I can use this. I can prove duress. I can prove conspiracy. I can prove that they manipulated Derek. I can prove that they corrupted Americus. I can tie it all back to Apex." Leona Road nodded. "That's why I brought it. I want you to use it. I want you to call a press conference. I want you to show the world what they did. I want you to expose them. And then I want you to buy them out." Julian said, "Buy them out." Leona Road said, "Apex is overleveraged. They've been buying up shipping companies for years. They're drowning in debt. They have more than $2 billion in outstanding loans. If you expose their conspiracy, if you prove their malfeasance, their creditors will lose confidence. Their stock will crash. And when it does, you can buy them at a fraction of the value. You can turn the tables. You can become the predator instead of the prey." Julian stood. He walked to the window. He looked out at the harbor. The cranes were still moving. The ships were still coming in. The world was still turning. And the fight was still his to win. He turned back to his father. "You're not trying to save the company. You're trying to save yourself. You're trying to avoid prosecution. You're trying to avoid going to prison with Derek and Americus." Leona R's face tightened. "That's a pa-RT of it. But it's not the whole pa-RT. I really do believe you can win this. I really do believe you're the only one who can." Julian said, "I don't trust you." Leona Road said, "You shouldn't. But you should trust the evidence. You should trust the documents. You should trust the facts. And the facts are on your side." Julian walked back to the desk. He picked up the briefcase. He closed it. He said, "I'll take the documents. I'll review them. I'll decide what to do. But if you're setting me up, if this is another trap, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in a federal prison." Leona Rhodes said, "I wouldn't expect anything less." Julian walked to the elevator. He pressed the button. The doors opened. He stepped inside. He looked back at his father. Leona Rhodes was sitting in the arcade. His face was unreadable. Julian said, "I'll call you when I need you." Leona Rhodes said, "You won't need me. You never did." The doors closed. Julian rode the elevator down to the data center. He walked to the workstation. He opened the briefcase. He began to read. The contract was detailed. It named names. It listed dates. It listed payments. It listed meetings. It was a blueprint of Apex's conspiracy. And it gave Julian everything he needed. He spent the next 3 hours studying it. He cross-referenced it with his own evidence. He connected the dots. He built a case. By midnight, he had a plan. He called Chen. "I need you to prep a press conference. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., the hotel ballroom. I want every major network there. I want the financial press there. I want the federal investigators there. I want everyone." Chen said, "What are you going to do?" Julian said, "I'm going to expose them. I'm going to show the world that Apex Capital is a criminal enterprise. I'm going to show them that Derek was a pawn. I'm going to show them that Americus Webb was a plant. And I'm going to show them that my father was a victim." Chen said, "Your father is a victim," Julian said. "He will be. By the time I'm done, he'll be the sympathetic figure. The old man who was manipulated. The founder who was betrayed. The father who tried to save his company. I need the narrative to be clean. I need the public to be on my side." Chen said, "That's brilliant. And ruthless." Julian said, "That's the point." He spent the rest of the night preparing. He wrote his speech. He organized the documents. He rehearsed his delivery. By dawn, he was ready. He showered in the office bathroom. He put on a fresh suit. He looked at himself in the mirror. He looked tired. He looked determined. He looked like a man who was about to win a war. He walked to the elevator. He pressed the button for the lobby. The doors opened. The lobby was filled with reporters. Cameras, lights, microphones. They turned as he walked in. They shouted questions. He did not answer. He walked through the crowd. He walked to the hotel ballroom across the street. He walked to the podium. He faced the lights. He faced the cameras. He faced the world. He said, "Good morning. I have a statement, and I have evidence. I am going to prove that Apex Capital, a London-based private equity firm, has been conspiring to destroy Cross Logistics for the last 4 years. I am going to prove that they infiltrated our company. I am going to prove that they corrupted my brother. I am going to prove that they manipulated my father. And I am going to prove that they are criminals." He held up the contract. He held up the evidence. He held up the truth. The room went silent. Julian began to speak. Julian's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. He did not raise it. He did not need to. The silence was absolute. Every camera was trained on him. Every reporter held their breath. He held the contract high, the pages catching the GLA of the studio lights. "This document," he said, "is a binding agreement between Leona Roadcross and Apex Capital. It was signed 2 years ago. It gives Apex the right to purchase controlling interest in Cross Logistics for $500 million RS. The deadline for that purchase is today. This agreement was signed under duress. Leona Roadcross was told that if he did not sign, Apex would expose Derek's fraud liar than planned. They would trigger a federal investigation that would destroy the company and send my father to prison. They blackmailed him, and he signed to protect the family name." He flipped to the next page. "This is a list of payments. Apex Capital funneled money to Americus Webb through a series of shell companies. Americus Webb used that money to bribe BOA RD members. He used that money to fund Derek's side operations. He used that money to create the illusion of profitability while bleeding the company dry. Every dollar that was stolen from Cross Logistics can be traced back to Apex. He flipped again. This is a record of meetings. Apex representatives met with my brother on 12 occasions. They coached him. They gave him instructions. They told him which suppliers to use, which contracts to sign, which accounts to hide the money in. Derek was not the mastermind. He was an instrument. Apex was the hand that wielded him. He set the contract down. He looked at the cameras. I have more. I have bank statements. I have email correspondence. I have audio recordings. I have footage from surveillance cameras that show Apex operatives meeting with my father, my brother, and M.A. Ruckus Webb. I have enough evidence to indict every single person involved in this conspiracy. And I am handing that evidence over to the federal authorities today. A reporter shouted, "What about your father? You said he was blackmailed. Does that mean you're not going to pursue charges against him?" Julian paused. He had anticipated this question. He had read his answer serifully. My father was a victim. He was manipulated by people he trusted. He made mistakes. He was weak. He was afraid. But he was not the architect of this conspiracy. When he realized what Apex was planning, he came to me. He gave me the contract. He gave me the evidence. He gave me the tools to fight back. He chose to do the right thing. And for that, I am grateful. Another reporter, "What about Derek? What about M.A. Ruckus Webb?" Julian said, "Derek and M.A. Ruckus will face justice. They are already in federal custody. They will be tried for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. I am not protecting them. I am not forgiving them. They made their choices. They will answer for them." The room buzzed. Julian raised his hand. The noise subsided. He said, "But this is not just about punishment. This is about survival. Apex Capital is a predator. They have done this before. They have dismantled 3 other shipping companies in the last 5 years. They buy distressed assets, strip them for RTS, and leave the employees jobless and the communities devastated. They are coming for Cross Logistics because they think we are weak. They think we are divided. They think we will collapse." He leaned 4-way road. His voice dropped. It was quieter now, more intimate, more dangerous. They are wrong. We are not weak. We are not divided. We are not going to collapse. I have the support of the union. I have the support of our clients. I have the support of our employees. And I have the support of our holders. We are going to fight. We are going to win. And when we do, we are going to buy Apex Capital. We are going to take their assets. We are going to acquire their holdings. We are going to dismantle them the way they tried to dismantle us. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Julian saw the reporters typing frantically on their phones. He saw the cameras zooming in on his face. He saw the analysts in the back row doing calculations on their laptops. He had their attention. He had the narrative. He had the momentum. He said, "Effective immediately. I am filing a lawsuit against Apex Capital for conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, and corporate espionage. I am filing a motion to void the contract my father signed under duress. I am filing a complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I am calling on every shareholder, every employee, and every partner of Cross Logistics to stand with me. We are going to take back our company, and then we are going to take theirs." He stepped back from the podium. The reporters erupted. They shouted questions. He ignored them. He walked off the stage. Chun met him at the side exit. "That was masterful," Chun said. "The stock is already stabilizing. The futures market is showing a rebound. And the news networks are running your speech on a loop." Julian said, "Good. Now I need you to do something else. I need you to contact every creditor of Apex Capital. I need you to tell them that their investment is about to become worthless. I need you to tell them that the conspiracy is going to be exposed, that the lawsuits are going to bankrupt the company, and that they should sell their debt to me at a discount." Chun blinked. "Buy their debt?" Julian said, "If we own their debt, we own them. When they default, we can seize their assets. We can take over their holdings. We can become their majority shareholder. And then we can liquidate them the way they liquidated their victims. Chun said, "That's going to take a lot of capital." Julian said, "I have capital. I have the liquid assets from the Bahamas. I have the line of credit from the European banks. I have the cash reserves from the company. And I have the support of the shareholders. I can raise another 200 million by the end of the week." Chun said, "You're going to acquire them." Julian said, "I'm going to destroy them. There's a difference." He walked out of the ballroom. The SUV was waiting. He got in. He told the driver to take him to the federal building. He had a meeting with Agent Navarro that she was waiting in her office when he arrived. She had watched the press conference on her tablet. She looked impressed. She also looked worried. "That was quite a performance," she said. Julian said, "It wasn't a performance. It was a declaration. I have the evidence. I have the documentation. I have everything you need to build a case against Apex Capital. But I need something from you." Navarro said. "What?" Julian said. "I need you to hold off on arresting my father. I need him to stay free. I need him to testify. He's my key witness. If you arrest him now, I lose him. And if I lose him, I lose the case." Navarro studied him. "You're protecting him." Julian said, "I'm using him. He's more valuable to me as a free man than as a prisoner. He can testify. He can identify the Apex operatives. He can describe the meetings. He can prove the duress. He's the linchpin of the entire conspiracy case. If you take him away, the prosecution falls apart." Navarro said, "That's a lot of trust to put in a man who conspired against you." Julian said, "I don't trust him. I trust the evidence. And the evidence is clear. My father was blackmailed. He was coerced. He was a victim. He's also the only one who can connect every dot. I need him free. I need him cooperative. And I need your assurance that you won't touch him until I give the word." Navarro was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I'll make a deal with you. I'll hold off on the arrest. But if he tries to run, if he tries to disappear, if he tries to destroy evidence, I'm coming for him. And I'm coming for you." Julian said, "Fair enough." He left the federal building. He got back into the SUV. He called his father. "The press conference is done," Julian said. "You're officially a victim. You're officially a witness. You're officially the hero who came forward to save the company. Don't screw it up." Leonard said. "I won't." Julian said, "I need you to prep a restatement. I need you to go on the record about the meetings with Apex. I need you to describe the blackmail. I need you to name names. I need you to be convincing. Can you do that?" Leonard said, "I can do that." Julian said, "Good, because if you don't, I'll personally hand you over to the FBI. And I'll make sure you don't get a deal." He hung up. He looked out the window. The city was passing by. The sun was setting. He had 24 hours to execute the next phase of the plan. He had to buy the debt. He had to destabilize Apex. He had to force them to the table. And he had to do it before they could strike back. His phone buzzed. It was S.A. Ra. "Mr. Cross, we've tracked the tall man. The ghost. He's not a ghost anymore. We found his identity. His name is Thomas Hale. He's a former intelligence officer. British. And he's the head of operations for Apex Capital. He's the one who ran the meetings with Derek. He's the one who managed the shell companies. He's the one who coordinated the entire conspiracy." Julian said, "Where is he now?" Sarah said, "He's at the airport. He's trying to leave the country. He has a private jet scheduled to depart in 2 hours." Julian said, "Don't let him leave. Call Agent Navarro. Give her the location. Tell her I want him detained. I want him questioned. And I want him to know that the game is over." Sarah said, "Yes, sir." Julian leaned back in the seat. He closed his eyes. He could hear the hum of the SUV. He could hear the distant roar of a plane overhead. He could hear the pulse of the city. He opened his eyes. He looked at the harbor. The cranes were still moving. The ships were still arriving. The world was still turning. And he was still fighting. The airport terminal was a hive of federal activity. Julian stood behind the glass wall of the observation deck, watching the private jet sit idle on the tarmac. The stairs were down. The door was open. No one was leaving. Agent Navarro had moved fast. She had mobilized a team within 15 minutes of S.A. Ross call. They had surrounded the plane before Thomas Hale could bow a road. He was in custody now, sitting in a holding room in the terminal basement, waiting for Julian to arrive. Julian walked down the stairs. He moved through the corridors of the airport, past the security checkpoints, past the curious STA residential of travelers and staff. He reached the holding room. 2 federal agents stood outside the door. They nodded. They opened it. Julian walked inside. Thomas Hale was seated at a metal table. He was tall, lean, with silver hair and ice-blue eyes. He wore a bespoke suit. His hands were cuffed in front of him. He looked calm. He looked unbothered. He looked like a man who had been in worse situations and walked out free. Hale said, "Mr. Cross, I've been expecting you." Julian sat across from him. "You've been expecting me," Hale smiled. "You're predictable. You take control. You consolidate power. You eliminate threats. I've studied you for years. You're a classic overachiever with a chip on your shoulder. You're not as unpredictable as you think." Julian said, "I don't need to be unpredictable. I just need to be effective. And I am. Your operation is over. Derek is in custody. Americus is in custody. Your shell company's a refrozen. Your assets a being seized. And you're sitting in a holding room with federal agents outside the door." Hale said, "You think this is over? It's not. Apex Capital is bigger than you think. We have holdings in 12 countries. We have relationships with governments. We have leverage you can't imagine. You may have won this battle, but you haven't won the war." Julian leaned forward. "You're right. I haven't won the war, but I'm about to. I've already contacted your creditors. They're selling your debt at a discount. I'm buying it. By the end of the week, I'll own more of Apex Capital than you do. And when that happens, I'll dismantle your entire organization. I'll fire your executives. I'll sell your assets. I'll leave nothing but dust." Hale's smile faltered. For the first time, Julian saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You don't have that kind of capital," Hale said. Julian said, "I have more than you think. I have the liquid assets from the offshore accounts. I have the lines of credit from the European banks. I have the support of my Shah holders. And I have the proceeds from the sale of the non-core holdings. I have enough to buy your debt, buy your company, and bury you." Hale was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You're bluffing." Julian stood. He walked to the door. He turned back. "I don't bluff. I act. You'll see the results in the morning papers. And when you do, I hope you enjoy your stay in federal prison. I hear the food is terrible." He walked out. Hale called after him, "Mr. Cross, you're making a mistake. You're STA rooting a war you can't win. Apex has resources you can't match. We have allies you don't know about. We have." Julian closed the door. He didn't look back. He walked through the terminal. He called Chun. "Status on the debt acquisition." Chun said, "We've secured 40% of Apex's outstanding debt. 3 more creditors are renegotiating. They want to sell. Their SCA read of the fallout from the press conference. They think Apex is going to collapse." Julian said, "Good. Keep pushing. I want 80% by tomorrow. I want controlling interest. I want to be able to call a Shah holders meeting and take over the Boa Road." Chun said, "That's aggressive." Julian said, "That's the point." He ended the call. He walked to the exit. The sun was rising over the city. The sky was pink and orange. The harbor was golden. The cranes were moving. The ships were coming in. The world was still turning. He got into the SUV. He told the driver to take him to the Cross Logistics headquarters. He had one more meeting to attend. The Boa Room was packed when he arrived. The remaining directors were seated around the table. They looked nervous. They had seen the press conference. They had seen the federal agents. They had seen the stock rebound. They knew the winds were shifting. Julian walked to the head of the table. He did not sit. He stood. He looked at each of them. He said, "I'm calling an emergency shareholders meeting. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning. I'm going to present a motion to restructure the Boa Road. I'm going to remove the remaining members who were appointed by Derek or Americus. I'm going to appoint new directors. I'm going to take full operational control." A director spoke. His name was H.A. Risen. He had been on the Boa RD for 12 years. He was a friend of Leona RD's. He was also complicit. "Julian, you can't just remove us. We have rights. We have protections. We have," Julian said. "You have nothing. I have the evidence. I have the documents. I have the recordings. I know about the bribes. I know about the kickbacks. I know about the side deals. I know everything. And I am prepared to release it all if you don't resign voluntarily." H.A. Risen's face went pale. The other directors shifted in their seats. They exchanged glances. They knew the game was over. H.A. Risen said, "We'll resign. We'll sign the papers. Just don't release the evidence. We have families. We have reputations." Julian said, "I don't see a re about your families. I don't see a re about your reputations. I see a re about this company. I see a re about the employees. I see a re about the clients. And I see a re about winning." He slid a stack of papers across the table. They were resignation letters. They were already signed by Julian. They just needed the director's signatures. "Sign them. All of you, or I'll make your lives a living hell." The directors signed. One by one. H.A. Risen was the last. His hand trembled. He looked at Julian. "You're ruthless?" H.A. Risen said. Julian said, "I'm effective." He collected the papers. He walked to the door. He turned back. "You have 24 hours to clear out your offices. Security will escort you out. Don't try to take anything. Don't try to contact anyone. Just leave." He walked out. He took the elevator to the top floor. He walked into his office. He sat in the chair. He looked at the harbor. The sun was fully up now. The cranes were busy. The ships were docking. The port was alive. His phone buzzed. It was S.A. Ra. "Mr. Cross, we've done it. We've secured 72% of Apex's debt. We have controlling interest. We can call a shareholders meeting. We can take over the Boa Road. We can dismantle the company." Julian said, "Do it. Call the meeting. Schedule it for tomorrow afternoon. I want to present the motion to dissolve Apex Capital and liquidate its assets. I want to sell off everything. I want to leave them with nothing." S.A. Ra said, "Yes, sir." He hung up. He leaned back in the chair. He closed his eyes. He thought about Derek. He thought about Americus. He thought about his father. He thought about Thomas Hale. He thought about the hundreds of people who had been caught in the web of corruption and greed. He opened his eyes. He looked at the harbor. The cranes were moving. The ships were arriving. The world was still turning. He picked up the phone. He called Agent Navarro. "I have a question about Thomas Hale. What's going to happen to him?" Navarro said. "He's being charged with conspiracy, racketeering, and money laundering. He's looking at 25 years. Maybe more. He's not going anywhere." Julian said, "Good. Can I see him one more time?" Navarro said, "He's being transferred to the Federal Detention Center in an hour. You can see him before then." Julian said, "I'll be there in 30 minutes. He drove to the federal building. He walked to the holding room. Hale was still there. His cuffs were still on. His face was still calm. Hale said, "Back so soon?" Julian said, "I have news. I've secured controlling interest in Apex Capital. I'm going to dissolve the company. I'm going to sell your assets. I'm going to fire your executives. I'm going to leave nothing." Hale's calm broke. His face contorted. His voice cracked. "You can't do that. You have no right. You're destroying thousands of jobs. You're destroying decades of work. You're destroying." Julian said, "I'm destroying you. That's the point. You tried to destroy my family. You tried to destroy my company. You tried to destroy my legacy. And now you're going to watch everything you built collapse around you. I'll make sure of it." He turned and walked out. He didn't look back. He walked through the corridors. He walked to the elevator. He pressed the button for the lobby. The doors opened. He walked out into the sunlight. The city was awake. The traffic was moving. The people were walking. The world was still turning. Julian stood on the sidewalk. He looked at the sky. He looked at the harbor. He looked at the cranes. He had won. He had dismantled the conspiracy. He had dismantled the rival. He had taken control. He had saved the company. He had done everything he said he would do. But the war was not over. There would be others. There would be new enemies. There would be new battles. And he would be ready. He walked to the SUV. He got in. He said to the driver, "Take me to the office. I have work to do." The SUV pulled into the underground garage. Julian sat in the back seat for a long moment, the engine idling, the world muffled behind tinted glass. He did not move. He did not speak. He let the silence settle around him like a second skin. He had done it. Derek was in custody. Americus was in custody. Thomas Hale was in custody. Apex Capital was on the verge of dissolution. His father was neutered, grateful, and under watch. The Boa RD was purged. The unions were loyal. The clients were staying. The stock was stabilizing. He had won. But winning did not feel the way he had imagined. It did not feel like triumph. It did not feel like relief. It felt like the quiet after a storm. When the winds have died and the rain has stopped and the world is still and waiting. He had dismantled the conspiracy, but the conspiracy had left its marks. The company was damaged. The trust was fractured. The family was broken. He had saved the empire, but the empire was not the same. And neither was he. He stepped out of the SUV. He walked to the elevator. He pressed the button for the top floor. The doors opened onto the empty corridor. The office was dark. He did not turn on the lights. He walked to the window. He looked out at the harbor. The cranes were still moving. The ships were still arriving. The port was still alive. But he felt disconnected from it, as if he were watching it from a great distance. As if he were no longer RT of the world, he had fought so hard to control. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Chun. "Apex shareholders meeting is set for tomorrow at 2 p.m. We have the votes. We have the control. We can dissolve the company. Awaiting your final decision." Julian Sta read at the screen. He had the power to destroy Apex. He had the power to liquidate their assets, fire their executives, and scatter their holdings to the wind. He could complete the cycle of vengeance. He could leave them with nothing. He could make them feel the same devastation they had tried to inflict on him. But he hesitated. He thought about the thousands of employees who would lose their jobs. He thought about the ripple effects of a sudden collapse. He thought about the markets, the creditors, the families who depended on the stability of the industry. He had spent years building a network of people who trusted him. He had spent months preparing for this moment. And now that it was here, he was not sure if destruction was the answer. He typed a response. "Hold the meeting. I'll decide tomorrow." He put the phone in his pocket. He turned away from the window. He walked to the desk. The resignation letter from his father was still in the drawer. He pulled it out. He read it again. The words seemed hollow now. The apology seemed meaningless. His father had been manipulated, yes. He had been blackmailed. He had been a victim. But he had also been complicit. He had also been willing to sacrifice Derek. He had also been willing to sacrifice Julian. He had made choices, and those choices had consequences. Julian folded the letter. He placed it back in the drawer. He closed the drawer. He sat in the chair. He looked at the harbor. He had done what he set out to do. He had exposed the truth. He had punished the guilty. He had protected the innocent. He had rebuilt the company. He had fought the war and won the battle. But the war was not over. It would never be over. There would always be new enemies. There would always be new threats. There would always be new betrayals. And he would always be there, waiting, watching, ready to fight. He stood. He walked to the elevator. He pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors opened. He stepped inside. He did not look back. The lobby was empty. The security guard nodded. Julian walked through the revolving doors. The night air hit his face. He looked up at the sky. The stars were out. The city was quiet. The world was still. He walked to the diner across the street. He ordered black coffee. He sat in the booth by the window. He watched the glass tower. His tower, standing tall against the dark sky. He had won. But the fight would come again. And when it did, he would be ready.